guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Mr. Bob in here, and in this video I'm going to be showing you guys how to create your own long sleeve stripe madness crop top, and this is how it looks. I also have this pattern available on my site at copydolls.com, a written pattern, so if you're interested in that, be sure to check that out. And of course, like always, this pattern is measurement based, which means you'll be measuring yourself throughout the entire process so that your crop top fits your specific body type the way you want it to fit. And this was my first time making a long sleeve like shirt, period. So this was the first time I made it. So it wasn't challenging like I expected it to be, but it was my first time, and I didn't have time to like make one first before doing a tutorial, which is why I just made the tutorial hoping that it came out good, and it did, thankfully, because I would have had to redo the entire tutorial if it didn't come out the way it came out. But everything's great, and you guys are watching this video clearly, so that means it was a go. But I don't want to talk a lot. I just wanted a little intro before getting into the tutorial. So that's really all I have to say. I hope you guys enjoy the video, and let's get right into it. Okay, so for this tutorial, you're going to need 3 balls of Lily Sugar and Cream yarn. You want to get the supersized one. I just have a small one because I ran out of the big one, but it should be Lily Sugar and Cream supersize, and it should have 4 ounces and 113 grams. So you're gonna need actually 2 of one color, 2 and 2. So in total you're going to need 6. But of course you'll have colors of your choosing. I just went with these bright colors since it's summer. I wanted something summery, but of course you can pick any color you would like. But these are the 3 colors I will be using for this project. You're also going to need a row counter so you can keep track of how many rows you're doing. So if you're on the first row, you'll have it on 1. When you get to the second, click it and it'll be on the second one. When you get to the third, after you chain 1, you'll see that it's on 3, and so on. It can just keep going and keep going. I use this a lot because it's very helpful, so I don't have to go back and recount all the rows I did. I just click it every time I change a row, and it'll have the number there for me to remember or see, so I don't have to remember. So an electronic row counter is very much recommended. It's not needed or necessary for you to complete your project, but I highly recommend getting a electronic row counter. And you'll also need a measuring tape to measure occasionally throughout this project. Hold on. So this is how it looks, and you'll need this because this is a measurement based pattern, so you're going to be measuring yourself throughout the entire project, so this is a necessity. You will need a measuring tape to complete this project. You're also going to need a tapestry needle, and then you're going to need stitch markers or some type of marker to mark, you know, where you're at in your project. You can use bobby pins if you want to, but I just get these stitch markers and keep them in a little Ziploc bag. And then you're going to need scissors, of course, and then for my ribbing, I use a 4mm hook just so my stitches are tighter. And then for the body panel, I use a 4.5. But if you don't have like multiple hooks, you can definitely just use a 4.5. Or honestly, you can use a 4mm. Either one works, but I use my 4 for the ribbing and my 4.5 for the body panel. So I'm going to be using my white for the ribbing, and we're going to be starting with the front panel. I actually already have yarn, so I'm actually going to put these on the side and continue off with the yarn I was originally using, but I just wanted to show you guys the yarn you will need. Okay, so this is my little yarn, little balls, because I've already used some of it. So I'm going to start off with my 4mm hook, and we're going to start with the ribbing. So again, we're going to be doing the front panel first, and then the back panel, and then we'll start on the sleeves. So to start off, we're going to do a slip stitch and then chain 7. After you chain 7, you're going to single crochet in each stitch and then chain 1 when you get to the end. So when you get to the end, you're going to chain 1 and then turn your work, and your ribbing should look something like this to begin with. Once you've chained 1, you're going to single crochet in a back loop only across the entire ribbing until you get to the end and chain 1 again. So single crochet in a back loop only. At the end of each row, you're going to chain 1 and then turn your work. So you're going to continue this single crocheting across in a back loop only, and then chaining 1 at the end until the ribbing fits around the front half of your torso. But in the next clip, I'm going to show you guys exactly what I mean. But for now, and my cat just jumped. But you're just going to continue single crocheting in the back loop only until the ribbing fits around the front half of your torso. So again, you're gonna repeat this going into the back loop only, single crocheting, and then continuing until it fits around the front half of your torso. And again, I'll show you guys exactly what I mean in the next clip. Okay, so I finished my ribbing, and what I mean by wrapping it should fit around the front half of your torso is it should, when you finish, it should stop right here, measuring around the front half of your torso. So continue your ribbing until it fits around the front half of your torso. Once you have your ribbing, it is now time to start the body panel. So the sequence I use is 3, 2, 1. So I'm gonna go in with 3 rows of blue each time, 2 of yellow, and then 1 of white. So I'm gonna start with my blue. You can start with any color you have. It doesn't really matter as long as the stripes, which it will be in the end. So I'm gonna undo that last stitch so I can change the color in it. And then I'm going to continue as if I am single crocheting, but before I yarn over, I'm going to take my blue yarn or whatever color you're going to be using and put it right on top of that, which is yarning over in its own way. Then you're going to pull through. After that, I grab these 2 pieces, kind of give them a little tug, and then I chain 1. And now you can start your body panel. So to start the body panel, we're gonna half double crochet across the entire ribbing. I'm gonna go into this big gap, I don't know why it's so big, and half double crochet. It's a little tight. So for the ribbing, you have 2 points. There's gonna be this thick point right here, and then this wide gap right here. So what you're gonna do is half double crochet in the thick part, and then half double crochet in that thin part right here. Again, you're going to half double crochet in that thick part, and then half double crochet right here in this wider part. So I carried my yarn through, so now I'm just going to cut this white off because I don't need it anymore. And continue on. So again, there's this thick part right here you're gonna go through, and then a thin part. Onyx. So you're gonna go through this thick part again, this chunky part, half double crochet, and then half double crochet in the next stitch, which is that wide. So thick again, and then wide. Thick and wide. So this is how your ribbing should be looking. Let me zoom out so you guys can see. We're gonna continue until I get to the end. Half double crochet in that last stitch, chain one, and then turn our work. And that is officially the first row. So once you finish, you're going to continue half double crocheting across with 3 rows of blue, 2 rows of yellow, and 1 row of white, or whatever color sequence you want to go with. But the color sequence I'm doing is 3, 2, 1. So 3 blue, 2 yellow, and 1 white. So you're going to continue that sequence until you have a total of 24 rows. And then after the 24th row, you're going to stop and measure. And I'll show you guys what I mean in the next clip. And actually, I was supposed to change my hook, which I totally forgot to. Okay, so I changed my hook, and I'm just gonna continue half double crocheting across. So now I'm on the 3rd row of the blue, so I'm gonna get ready to change the color to yellow. So I'm gonna pretend as if I'm half double crocheting, so yarning over and going into that stitch and pulling through. But before I yarn over again, I'm gonna take my yellow. Yarn it over itself, and then pull through. Then I'm gonna give those 2 pieces a tug and chain 1 and turn. Then I'm gonna continue half double crocheting across while I'm carrying the yarn as well in the back. So half double crocheting like normal while carrying the yarn in the back. Once I get to like the 4th stitch, I like to cut the excess yarn off so I know that I really got it in there. So I cut the blue and a little bit of the yellow if you have a little strand. And then the blue will come back later. So now I'm working with yellow for 2 rows. So now I have 1 more stitch, and then it's gonna be time to change colors. So I'm just going to change the color to white and half double crochet across for a total of 1 row. So I got to the end and I have to go change color, but I'm not gonna change it yet. So this is the sequence I'm going for: 3, 2, 1, blue, yellow, white, and then you're gonna continue whatever sequence you're going with for a total of 24 rows, like I said before. And then we're going to come back and measure, and I'll show you what I mean in the next clip. Okay, so to determine how many rows you're going to need before decreasing, well, I just finished my 24th row, so this is how your panel should look once you have 24 rows. Now it's time to measure and see when you're gonna start decreasing. So the method I use is I place my panel against my body, and then I measure 1.5 inches below my collarbone, 1.5 right here. And then I place my panel right on that mark where it says 1.5. And then if my panel is where I want it, like for me, I want my panel to reach above my belly button. So this is how I want my crop top to be, right above my belly button like this. But if you want yours longer, you put your panel, you can't really see my face, but that doesn't matter. You put your panel right on that 1.5 mark, and then if you want it longer and you see that it's short like this, then that means you'll have to add more rows before you start decreasing. And then to measure again, once you add more rows or take away, you put it at that 1.5 mark again, and then if it's right where you want it, you have your front panel, and now it's time to start decreasing. Okay, so I added 3 more rows just because that's what I do with my other crop tops. So I have a total of 27 rows right now. Yours could be different. It could be 24 like at the point we stopped at, or it could be 40, or it just depends on your body type. So now that I have the amount I want, it's time to start the width of the collar, to find the width of the collar. And for that, you're going to need your stitch markers, or whatever you're gonna use to mark your project. So I'm gonna get a couple out, and then you're going to fold your panel in half like this. Yes, my panel is really small because I'm small, so ignore that. But you're gonna fold your panel in half like this, and then grab a stitch marker and place it right in that middle point in that crease. So it should look like this, and that should be your middle point. But if you want a more accurate point, count from the stitch marker to the end on both sides, and if you have the same number, then it's in the middle. If you need to adjust your stitch marker after you count on both sides because one side is off, then do that. But this is a very accurate point, so that's what you do. So once you have your middle point, you're going to take your measuring tape and measure out 3 inches from that middle point, and then place a stitch marker there, and then do that on the other side as well. But for me, since I have a smaller head, I'm going to measure out 2.5 inches instead of 3, because I don't want my width of the collar to be like super wide since my head is so small. So if you have a bigger head, you want to go to 3 inches. If you have a smaller head, you may want to go to 2 or 2.5 inches like I will do. And once you have your 3 stitch markers placed, you don't need your middle stitch marker anymore, and now you have the width of your collar right here. So now it's time to start decreasing, and for that I'm just going to turn my work because this is where I left off, and I'm just going to add the next color, which is yellow, on there. So actually I wasn't supposed to turn it since I have to change the color for the next row. So I'm going to change that color really quickly, and then I'm gonna turn. So I'm gonna add my yellow right now, and then turn. Okay, so now it's supposed to be turned. Now I'm going to half double crochet across until I have 1 stitch left. Now that I have 1 more stitch left and the stitch with the stitch marker in it, I'm going to take that stitch marker out and now it is time to decrease. So I'm going to decrease in those 2 stitches and chain 1. Chain 1 and then turn. Next, I'm going to half double crochet across, no decreases at all, just half double crochet straight across and then chain 1 at the end. I also like to place a stitch marker on that first stitch so I remember where I started. Once you get to the end, it's time to change colors, but I'm not gonna do that just yet. So now I'm at the end and I'm gonna change my color to white really quick because we're continuing that 3, 2, 1 sequence. But from here on out, you're going to repeat the 2 rows we just did, half double crocheting and decreasing in the last 2 stitches, chaining 1 and then half double crocheting across. And you will always decrease in every other row. So from here on out, you're going to be decreasing in every other row, and you will always decrease on this part of the panel, in this inner part. So you'll always decrease in this part in every other row, and don't forget to change colors so you continue your 3, 2, 1 sequence. So you're going to continue this sequence until it reaches the front part of your shoulder, and in the next clip I'm going to show you exactly what I mean. But for now, you're going to continue this 3, 2, 1 sequence, decreasing on this side and every other row. Okay, so I finished one side of the panel, and this is how it should look once you finished. And now it's time to do the other side, and for that you're just going to attach your yarn and do exactly the same thing you did on this side. Okay, so I finished the front panel, and this is how it looks. So what I mean by continue until it fits the front half of your shoulder is it should fit right here when you finish. So this is that 1.5 inch mark you did when you were measuring to see how good it'll be right here. So once your panel fits to that front part, then that's when your panel is done. For me, it takes 9 rows after this part. Like when it's like this, I do 9 rows, and that's what fits that front half of my shoulder. For you, it could be 12, it could be 15, it could be more, but I'm small, so my numbers will always be on the smaller side of numbers. So yeah, front part right here is where you want to stop. So it should look like this. So this is how my front panel looks, and now it's time to do the back panel. But before we do the back panel, you're gonna count all the rows you did in the front, because that is the exact number you'll have to do for the back. And same for the ribbing. If you didn't count your ribbing, you're gonna have to count your ribbing, because you're gonna have to repeat this entire process for the back. Here's my back panel. I already did it. The only difference in the back panel is that there will be no decreases, increases, none of that. All you're gonna do is do the ribbing and then go up to however many rows you did for the front. So for example, I did 36 rows total for the front, so I'm gonna do 36 rows total for the back without decreasing at all. So it should just be this blank, this not blank, but just solid piece of panel. And then that will be your front. So in the end, it should look something like this when you turn it around. Now, once you finish your back panel, it's time to connect your front and back together. So to connect the front and back panel, I'm going to get a few stitch markers, and then I'm going to align my panels together so that it's like this. And then I'm going to place a stitch marker at the end of the where the front panel ends. So that front piece right here. Then I'm going to do the same on the other side, stitch mark it where that panel ends right here. Let me scoot this down. And now you're going to slip stitch these pieces together. So slip stitch across. Once you get to the end, you're just going to chain 1 and then cut your yarn. So now once your panels are slip stitched together, it should look something like this, and when you flip it over, it should look like this. I have to leave that end in, so ignore that. But this is how your panel should look, and once it's put together, it'll be like this. Now it's time to start on the sleeves. So for the sleeve, you're going to start off with a slip stitch, of course, and I move back to my 4mm hook. And then you're going to chain 9. Once you chain 9, you're going to single crochet in each stitch and chain 1 at the end. So chain 1 and then turn your work, and then work half double crochets in the back loop only of each stitch, chain 1 at the end, and you're going to repeat this until the ribbing wraps around your wrist perfectly. And of course I'll show you guys what I mean in the next clip. So you want to continue your ribbing until it fits around your wrist like this. You want to give it a little room as well, because when you start crocheting across, your stitches starts tightening and making it shorter than what it needs to be. So I always give mine a little bit more room. I don't make it perfect like this to where it's like cinched completely. I give it a little room so when I do start crocheting around, it won't be tight. So now that the ribbing is complete, it's time to move to the sleeve panel. So I'm going to put my hook up and change to my 4.5, and of course in that last stitch I'm going to change colors to my blue, because of course we're continuing that 3-2-1 sequence with blue, yellow, and white. So I'm going to change my color, chain, and chain 1. So for this ribbing, it's a little different than the other one we did, and I'll show you why, but I'm gonna zoom in so you guys can see a little better. So for this ribbing, we're gonna be increasing in it, and to do that, you're gonna half double crochet like normal in that first one. But then when you get to the thick part, there's 2. there's two sections really, and it should have a split like this. So you're gonna go in this side of that split and then in the other side of that split, and then is the wide part. So this split right here, then go in there, and then go in there, and you're gonna do that across the entire ribbing. So half double crochet in one side of the thick part, and then half double crochet in the other side of the thick part, and then we're back to that one wide section with half a double crochet, of course. And then I'm just gonna cut this excess yarn off because I don't need it anymore, and then continue. And this is increasing, so you're gonna go in one section of that thick part, and then go into the other side of that section in the thick part, and then it's the wide part. Then go back in one section of that thick part, and then go in the other side, and then there's the wide part. So you're gonna keep doing that, going in one side of the thick, other side, and then the wide across the entire ribbing. Then in the last stitch, you're just gonna have double crochet like normal, and then chain one and turn your work. So this is the first row, and your ribbing should look something like this. Now we're just going to be half double crocheting across like normal and changing colors as we go. And you're gonna continue half double crocheting across until your sleeve panel reaches this crease on your arm. So continue your ribbing like this until it reaches this crease, and then we're going to stop and increase again. But for now, you're just gonna half double crochet across, and occasionally check and see if your sleeve is still fitting, because sometimes it may tighten up and you may need to increase in one row. But just be cautious and occasionally check to see if your sleeve is actually fitting as you go. So I'm at the end, so I have to change colors now, but I wanted to show you guys that your sleeve should be looking like this once you have a few rows, and it's going to start expanding like this way. So if you see that happening, it's totally fine and normal. But again, you're going to continue this sequence until the sleeve fits right here, until it gets to this part in your arm, and then we're going to have to increase again. And don't forget to occasionally check to make sure your sleeve is actually fitting the way it's supposed to fit, like this. Once your sleeve reaches that halfway mark where your crease is, see my sleeve reach that crease right here, it is now time to increase. Get it? Anyway, okay, so I already started my row, so you're gonna start your row like normal and continue half double crocheting across until you have one stitch left. So now I have one stitch left, and I'm just going to increase into it, which is just 2 half double crochets into 1 stitch. And once I have 2 half double crochets in 1 stitch, that is an increase. And from here on out, I'm going to increase on the end of each row until the panel fits around your upper arm. So now I'm on the last stitch, and it's time to increase and change the color. So to do that, you're just gonna go in that last stitch like normal, half double crochet, and then go in again to half double crochet, but before you yarn over, you're gonna get your new color and yarn that over for it. Of course, once your color is changed, you're just going to chain 1 and turn. Then you're gonna half double crochet across like normal until you get to the end, and then increase again. Okay, so you're gonna keep crocheting up until the sleeve panel fits around this part of your arm right here. So you see how it fits around my arm like this perfectly. Your sleeve isn't going to be done. You just want to have a point to stop increasing. So now I'm going to stop increasing at this point because it fits around my arm right here like this. And then I'm going to stop increasing and just half double crochet across until my sleeve fits my entire arm. And I'll show you guys the method I use to determine how long my sleeve will be. I'll show you guys that like right now. So I already finished one sleeve, so this is how it looks. So when I stopped increasing at this point right here, I just kept going until it fit around my arm. But to determine how long your sleeve is gonna be, you're gonna take your panel that you made, the panel that you slip stitched together, then you're going to put that on, and then your panel's on. Now to determine how long you want your sleeve to be, you're just gonna place it against that panel right here, and then that'll kind of tell you how long your sleeve is gonna be. So if I were to stop this sleeve right now, which isn't done, and I put it right here, this is how long my sleeve will be. So if you want your sleeve all the way down here, of course you're gonna have to keep going, half double crocheting across until it gets to a point that you like. So for me, I have a total of 50 rows for my sleeves, but for you it could be 60 or it could be less, but I went with 50 rows, and this is how it looks when I place it against that panel, and it's to my wrist. So back to this panel. So once you get that to that point where it fits around your arm like this, you're gonna stop increasing and then continue half double crocheting across until it gets to a point where you like it. Once you finish both sleeves, now it's time to attach all the panels, sleeves, and everything together. So now you should have your body panel, which looks like this, and your 2 sleeves. And now it is time to attach everything together. So to do that, you're going to take your body panel and flip it inside out so that the seam is facing your way. Then you're going to fold your panel in half like this and place a stitch marker right in the middle of the sleeve. So right here. And once you have the stitch marker in the middle of the sleeve, you're then going to attach that stitch marker and put it right in the middle of that seam. So when it is put together, it looks something like this. Once the sleeve is stitch marked to the panel, you're gonna wanna flip the sleeve around, flip your panel around so that the correct side is now facing you. So the correct side is facing you now, and then you're going to flip your sleeve over and place it right on top of that. So your sleeve looks like this against the panel. And after that, I'm just gonna take a couple of stitch markers and stitch mark along the edge. So now that my panel is stitch marked together, I am now going to slip stitch it together. Now that I'm at the end, I'm just going to chain 1, give my yarn a little tug and then cut and tie a knot. Then I like to weave my end in right away. Then I cut that off as well, and now your sleeve is attached to your panel, and it should look like this when you flip it over. So when you fold your panel together, your sleeve should be attached and looking like this. And then you're just going to do the same to the other side. So once both sleeves are attached, it should look something like this. And now you're going to flip it over so we can slip stitch everything together. So flip it over like this. So I like turning my project to the side to slip stitch everything together. So I'm going to slip stitch this side, and to do that I'm going to pinch everything together so that they are lined up. So since this is pinched together nicely like this, I'm going to attach stitch markers along the edge all the way to the end of the sleeve so that when I'm slip stitching across, nothing moves. And I like to place a stitch marker like right before that ribbing, so my ribbing will always be together. And then after that, I just place it at random points along the edge. I also like to secure this point in the panel as well, because this part is very important. So I really like to get a stitch marker in there to make sure this part for sure doesn't move at all, because you don't want this part to be wonky and then your sleeve doesn't fit at all. So this corner right here, I like to make sure it is very, very secure. Then after that, I'm just gonna turn some more so that I can continue placing stitch markers along the sleeve. So it's the same with this ribbing. I place it right before so that this ribbing does not shift, and it will always be aligned like that. So now, since everything is stitch marked together, I'm going to slip stitch along the entire edge, starting from right here, starting from this ribbing and ending at this ribbing. Now I've finally reached the end, and like always, I'm just gonna cut that yarn off, pull through, tie a knot, and then weave that end in. And now the sleeve is slip stitched together. Now it's time to do the same to the other side. So once the sleeves are attached together, it's time to flip it around and start on the collar. And once you turn it around, it should look something like this. But we'll be starting on the back. And then we're going to take our yarn and find any point in the back of the panel. It doesn't really matter, just some point in the back of it. And then you're going to attach your yarn and then chain 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then for this, I also like turning my work horizontal because that's just how I work best with it. I'm gonna zoom in some more so you guys can really see what I'm doing. So after you chain 5, you're going to single crochet in each stitch until you get to the end. Once you get to the end, you're going to slip stitch in the next 2 stitches and then turn and work single crochet in a back loop only and then chain 1 at the end. So I'm gonna chain 1, turn my work, and single crochet back down in a back loop only. And then slip stitch in the next 2 stitches. And you're gonna repeat this process across the entire neckline. Okay, so I'm almost finished with my collar. I just have a few more stitches to go, but I want to show you guys how to end off the collar. So I'm gonna slip stitch into the next 2 stitches like I always do. And single crochet like I always do. Then of course I'm going to chain 1, turn my work, and work back down with single crochet. Then after that, I have 2 more stitches left, which is this one and then the one I started off with. So I'm going to slip stitch into those 2. And then I'm gonna pull my yarn through. And you want to give it a good tug because you're going to be using this yarn to sew the collar together. So after I give it a good tug, I'm just gonna cut that yarn off right here and take it through like that. Now it is time to introduce the tapestry needle, and I'm just going to put my yarn through. I'm gonna put my yarn through like this, and then I'm going to pinch my collar together so that it is facing this way on the inside of the sweater, not the outside. So this is the correct side. You're gonna flip it together like this. Once it's flipped together like this, you're just going to sew the collar together. Then when I get to the end, I like taking the tapestry needle to the other side and going through like this so that the yarn gets caught right here on this edge and seals that shut. And then I cut that off. And then I tie a knot take my hook and weave that end in, and then I cut that off. So now your collar is slip stitched together and your entire crop top is complete. So it should look something like this when it is all finished. Ta-da!